that's great. We're going in here now. This is great. Now you're doing that. It's great. This is great.
Just a little explanation before we even start.
Oh, we're sorry. Great.
Magic is what I am. The reason that meditation is so important in magic is because whatever we fasten our attention on, that's the direction that our energy is going to flow in. So when you're doing magic, you want to keep your mind as single-pointedly focused on whatever you're trying to accomplish as possible. So that's what meditation does. It trains your mind, so it's not constantly scattered and going into, all different directions and dispersing the energy that you're trying to build up.
Right. I know what you're talking about. I've read some books on magic. I mean, Crowley, wow. But Jesus, he sure comes across as somber sometimes.
Yes, he does.
Lord.
And it takes forever to sort of crack open what he's even saying. You've got to learn so much other stuff before you can even begin to understand what the hell he's actually talking about a lot of times, because so much of it is written in a kind of code.
Woo! Yeah, I've noticed a lot of that magical stuff gets put into code. It's like they're trying to protect. Yeah, I've noticed that compared to some magical writings, some of the Eastern traditions seem way more simple.
Well, yeah, and the reason for that is because, when you're talking about Eastern traditions, Eastern paths, most of these practices are set up to lead you to this state of what they call enlightenment, what in magic we call crossing the abyss. Eastern traditions are focused on doing that over a period of several lifetimes. Magic is like pouring jet fuel on that process. It aims to accomplish it in one lifetime. So what you're trying to do is cram several lifetimes of spiritual and energetic experiences into one. And that can be a little overwhelming sometimes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And is that Tantra? That reminds me of Tantra. It's Tantra.
Yes. Tantra actually plays a huge role in certain aspects or certain traditions of magic, like the OTO, which Crowley was the head of whenever he died.
So I noticed that you've been ordained in Rinzai Zen.
Rinzai Zen Buddhism, yes, it was the tradition that trained the samurai in ancient Japan. When I was in prison, I had a Zen master that would come back and forth from Japan to the prison. And, I sat Zazen meditation for years. And, honestly, I did not get as much out of years of Eastern practices as I did months of ceremonial magic. And I think part of that, they're both aiming at the same thing. But whenever we, especially someone coming from my background, just poor white trash from Arkansas who has no connection to, any Eastern tradition at all, I had to learn that stuff from scratch. So It was like learning an entire different language. Whereas magic deals with Western iconography, symbolism, things that, we've grown up having shoved into our psyche from the second we came into this world. So I think part of us, some really deep internal part, responds to it a lot quicker than it does the Eastern traditions.
Right. I've heard different versions of what you're saying. That's cool. For example, let's take Ganesh, maybe Hanuman, for example, the monkey god. It's like, this is a very powerful symbol, but how many of us have had any real experience with monkeys in the wild?
Yes, we didn't have many monkeys in Arkansas.
Too bad. I love them. They are annoying, though.
Whew, those are some bad fish.
Yeah.
I don't have very many friends just because magic is my life.
For sure.
I do this for hours and hours and hours a day. This is not something that I do as like a hobby or, something on the side. This is the focal point of my life.
I can tell.
That's what I realized. That's why I wasn't miserable a lot of times when I was in prison. It's because even in there, in a hellish situation, I was doing what I was put here to do, which was magic. That alleviates a lot of suffering.
And if people jump ahead too far, you can really blow your face off with this stuff, so to speak, right? What are the roots of magic?
Magic, ceremonial magic, what we call high magic, originated in ancient Mesopotamia, somewhere around 3,500 BC. So it is uniquely Western. You know, that's not entirely the West, it's more the Middle East, because it originated in a part of the world that would now be, you know, present-day Iraq, in a city called Nippur. What
South
happened,
Africa.
the way we got it in
Johannesburg.
Europe was whenever the Knights Templar were sent over there to, you know, escort pilgrims through back and forth from the Holy Land to make sure they're not attacked by bandits, things like that.
Holy
Your
Land.
cats are really talented.
Thank you. The Knights Templar come in contact with this current. And when I say current, what I'm talking about, you know how in certain Buddhist traditions,
Yeah.
like say Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about, what's the word they use? Empowerment?
Sure.
You know, it's like a current of energy
Yes.
that's passed along from master to student. Ceremonial magic is the exact same thing. The Knights Templar started receiving this current whenever they were over there. That's how it makes its way back to Europe. Eventually, it makes its way to the United States through the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was the order that Crowley was a member of before he, you know, went off to the OTO. You had MacGregor Mathers, Dion Fortune, the poet W.B. Yeats. All of these people were members of the Golden Dawn. That's how this current makes its way to the U.S.
1 second. Hey, Steve!
What the fuck? You need to shine that light in my fucking eyes?
That's how you're gonna talk to customers? I'll just take my ship full of cats and find another junk island.
Well, a ship full of cats? Ah, shit. My apologies! Look at all these wonderful gifts and gadgets here. We got a fresh printer, time slapper, and some cans. And, oh. You want that? A vintage Enlil? Ugh. It ain't cheap, pal. It's gonna be 5 cats.
He's bluffing. I can get it for 3. Watch this.
3.
5.
Fine, Steve. 4. And that's my last offer.
All right. You're taking flakes out of my minnow's mouth, but fine. 4 it is. Send them over.
I forgot what the hell we were talking about.
We're talking about the transmission, what's also known as the disciplic succession.
Yes, people think, here's the thing that is so important that I want people to understand about magic whenever I talk about it a lot of times. When we're talking about something being an oral tradition, we sort of live under this misunderstanding that that means it's just a bunch of stories told, handed on. That's not what this means. What an oral tradition is, it means the way this current of energy is passed from one person to another is through the voice. You know, our voice is sound waves. We're creating sound waves which carry information. That's why, you know, in the Bible, I always tell people the Bible is the greatest book of magic ever written, once you know how to read it. You know, the whole thing in the very first chapter of the Bible, they're talking about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. That's because this is an oral tradition. Does that make sense? So that goes all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia. And I forgot.
Maybe further back. Is it the words that have the energy, or is it the energy coming out of the person saying the words?
Combination of both. For example, you can only pass the current if you receive the current. Like you could say the exact same words that a person who's holding the current would say, and if you're not holding the current, it's not going to transmit. You have to be holding the current and have the right words. There's 2 reasons to do magic. One is for manifesting something, and that can be anything from a parking spot to the career you want, to the relationship you want to be in, whatever it is. The other reason for doing magic is what I call spiritual sustenance, where you are deliberately invoking energy and intelligences that you then absorb into your energy system, into your aura, to make you grow, make you change.
That cat just sloshed me.
That's the mama cat. She's a prankster.
There's 2 ways that magic is passed on. One is through like a lodge or order setting, you know, like the Golden Dawn. That's more like a curriculum type thing, like a school, you know, everybody's learning the same thing at the same rate. The other way is like master to student, and that allows for,
Thank you. Things that are a little more profound just because you're not learning the same thing as everyone else. Blessed be thy feet that they may walk this path.
if it's someone who knows what they're doing, they can judge, you know, where you're at mentally, where you're at emotionally, where you're at spiritually, and figure out what it is that you need to sort of set off these bombs that cause epiphanies and realizations and things like that. Most people spend their lives complaining about things they don't like.
Yes.
So you're adding power to it. You're giving it chi. We're supposed to focus on what it is that we're wanting to move towards instead of away from. You don't have to lie when something is bad. You know, if you have a cold and someone says, "Are you sick?" That doesn't mean say no. It means say, "I'm getting better minute by minute."
Oh, that's great. Do you think that the reason you ended up in prison is because, this sounds so weird, good karma?
Yes, I absolutely, this will sound crazy to people, but I absolutely do. I am thankful now for the time that I spent in prison, even for some of the most horrible things that happened to me. Say, for example, you know, when I was beaten so bad that I was in a lot of physical pain. If I would have been out here, I could have just went to a doctor. I didn't have that option in there. I had to find ways to help me cope with not only the emotional and mental anguish that I was going through, but also the physical anguish, the physical pain. So that pushed me constantly to keep exploring what was possible with these practices. By the time that I got out of prison, I didn't even feel like I was in prison anymore. My cell almost felt like a control tower where I could reach out and touch anything in the world. I look at people out here now who think that I had like a horrible life. And don't get me wrong, there were some pretty unpleasant aspects of it.
Can we go?
You know, whether it was beating or starvation,
Forget.
or, you know, just living in fear sometimes that these people are going to kill you at any minute, whatever it is. Still, I think I had a better life than most of like the millennials I see that are sort of flailing around out there now, trying to figure out who they are and what they're going to do with themselves. I never had to experience any of that.
You guys cream?
I always knew what I was. I always knew what I was supposed to be doing. And I kind of embraced that.
When you say control tower and reaching out, do you mean that you were doing some form of astral projection or some kind of...
That is part of magic. And I don't like that word actually, but I don't know another word to use, astral projection, just because it sounds so kind of flaky and new agey. In our society now, well, not just our society in the West, but also in the East, we've sort of arrived at this conclusion somehow. Spirituality has become so watered down that we think enlightenment is the be-all and the end-all of spiritual practice. It's the finish line. It's not. There are actually things that come after that. What we think of as enlightenment is the first step in a process. In magic, what they call in the East enlightenment, we call solar consciousness. Solar consciousness means that you are completely and absolutely in the present moment, just like whenever you achieve enlightenment. After you develop solar consciousness, the next step in this process is developing what we call a solar body. You are building a vehicle to allow your consciousness to not disintegrate at the point of what we call the second death. The first death is when the physical body dies. The second death is whenever your astral or etheric body begins to unravel. That's whenever your consciousness goes through this sort of cosmic washing machine. Every aspect of personality is washed out of it. You're left with a kernel of pure energy, which is then recycled into something else. If you develop the solar body, that doesn't happen. You put your consciousness into the solar body at the moment of death. You then become not entirely, not exactly the same, but your consciousness is then completely unbroken for eternity. From that point on, you can come into the physical realm when, where, and how you choose, if you choose to do so. The point is to help other people complete this process. You know, Beethoven said that the point of being alive, the point of being human, is to approach divinity as closely as you possibly can, and then disseminate those rays out to mankind. Hold that thought.
Behold the death of the old eon and the birth of the new.
What the fuck, Daryl? I was asleep.
Yeah, well, it's time to wake up to the truth, Barry. Yeah.
Oh, so ruining my marriage wasn't enough, huh?
You ruined your own fucking marriage, Barry.
I just want to hear you say it. Say you fucked my
You
wife.
never woke up.
Oh, shit.
Bastard. What, you never woke the fuck up.
I'm gonna fuck you up for that.
You were napping and bringing rocks to life like some kind of dick. I was the one.
What this is
You
about?
were the one going to lads, getting lap dances at lads all the
I
time.
have platinum membership. I have your shit, though. That took years to earn.
Fucking fight and shut up.
Okay, now I'm the one who's supposed to shut
baby.
the fuck up. You didn't even try to...
Remembering prom. Classic.